Okay, good morning, everybody. Hello, and thank you for joining the first annual New Jersey Youth Transition Conference. My name is Chad Moitson. I'm from Monmouth Cares. I'll be the host for this session. This is our opening keynote address with the Commissioner of the Department of Children and Families, Christine Norbut Beyer. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Recording of these presentations will be available within the next few days on our website, www.newjerseyyouth-transition.life. This session is also being closed captioned. In order to activate the closed caption feature, please click on the live transcript button on the bottom of your screen window and click show subtitle. If you need technology support at any point during the conference, you can access our live Zoom support room sponsored by Richard West ATAC. The Zoom room link is available on our website on the conference agenda page. Please be patient as there may be many people seeking help at the same time. If you are having technology issues now, please first check your sound and try signing out and try signing back into the session before visiting the technology Zoom support room. Oftentimes this may fix the issue. Please note we'll have a hard stop at 9:30 for our next keynote speaker, Julia Bergeau. And with that, I'll hand it over to Commissioner Beyer.
Thank you so much, Chad. And good morning and welcome to the first annual New Jersey Youth Transition Conference, a day when we can celebrate and discuss the unique pathways to adulthood for young people living with and thriving with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the state of New Jersey. As Chad said, my name is Christine Norbut Beyer, and I'm the Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Children and Families. And it's my honor to welcome you to this virtual event to prepare youth and their families for the next steps in their path into a safe and healthy adulthood. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I just want to take a brief moment to recognize our host for today's event. Thank you so much to the teams at Values in Action, the Camden County Partnership for Children, the Ocean Partnership for Children, the Partnership for Children of Essex, and Monmouth Cares for all of your hard work in organizing today's virtual event and in continuing to support families as they move through the transition process. I'd also like to recognize that today's event would not have been possible without the generous financial support of Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, without the technical assistance of the Richard West Assistive Technology Advocacy Center through Disability Rights New Jersey. So thank you all so much for your advocacy, your talents, and your support. Next slide. Speaking of technology, I'd like to direct our conference attendees to the flow code link published in the conference program and currently on my slide. This code, when scanned with a camera-enabled device, either a smartphone or a tablet, will take you to a link tree where you will be able to access resources for today's event, including an informational video, the agenda, a link to sign up for an email listserv, and social media links for this conference. You can also visit the website www.njyouth-transition.life to view resources and connect with the conference participants in the vendor village. I encourage you, when you have a moment, to explore the provider information that's available and learn as much as you can about the programs and services that are out there to assist families. Next slide. During the New Jersey Youth Transition Conference, you'll hear about important components of transition planning for which youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families and support networks can become engaged. You'll hear from some of our partners from state agencies like the Department of Education, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, and the Division of Developmental Disabilities within our state Department of Human Services, and of course, the Division of Children's System of Care within the Department of Children and Families. At some point, it's going to feel like a lot of alphabet soup. There are a number of acronyms that you'll be hearing throughout the conference. Representatives will talk to you about access pathways, services, and coordination, the best approach for self-advocacy, person-centered planning. You'll hear about available supports, the role of the family, and how we're dedicated dedicated our system to ensuring that the voice of young people and families are elevated in the planning and transition process. You'll hear the importance of building relationships, of what actions you should be considering as you plan for transition. There are times when all of this information is going to feel overwhelming. During those times, I would encourage you to take a breath, recenter, and recognize that you do have people in your corner who want to see your family succeed, who want to see your child get the best care possible and the best opportunities possible in their lives. If you end up needing something clarified, there will absolutely be opportunities during the conference and afterward for you to follow up on any of the information presented. Next slide. In addition to our state partners, representatives from our care management organizations will also be sharing practical and useful information during this conference. If you're accessing this conference as a service provider, you'll get to hear about how you can best support and connect youth and families to the services they need. If you're a family member, you'll gain an understanding of what is available and how to access the resources that are specific to your child's and your family's individual needs. As an example, one of the things we're going to address is developmental disability eligibility and the steps required for the DD eligibility determination process. We'll also hear from providers about the services and supports that will be available if you are determined to be eligible. As we continue to serve children and families with intellectual and developmental disabilities, we continue to learn more about the best way to meet the needs of youth and families throughout our system. Making those connections between providers, family, and the state, and continuing to learn from each other is one of the reasons behind today's conference. We hope to get to a place where this is a continual feedback loop and an ongoing partnership, and that this becomes an essential component to our children's system of care values and approach. We want to maintain and uphold that the families and youth should be driving their own care planning in collaboration with having the right supports in the room. Next slide. The mission of the New Jersey Youth Transition Conference is to ensure that no person is left behind in the transition process from the Children's System of Care, or CSOC, and in school and adolescent and community supports to the Division of Developmental Disabilities, or DDD, supported employment programs through the state and through community nonprofit providers and independence, interdependence, and self-sufficiency programs. At DCF, we know that the path towards becoming an adult can be filled with hope and excitement for future opportunities, but it can also be a stressful and uncertain time, certainly made more so as a result of our current COVID-19 pandemic. Through the Department of Children and Families, we're committed to helping to alleviate some of that stress, at least insofar as setting clear expectations and supporting families as they shift from the child-centric system to the adult system. We're committed to making this as easy a transition as possible for you and your family members. Next slide. DCF's Division of Children's System of Care serves children and adolescents with emotional and behavioral health challenges and their families, children with developmental and intellectual disabilities and their families, and children with substance use challenges and their families. The operative word there is family. We know that no one walks this path alone. The young people living with intellectual and developmental disabilities have a network of support and caregivers who are invested in their happiness, wellness, and success. We value family voice, and we want to better support family needs. And if I'm being completely transparent and honest, I recognize that it probably hasn't always felt that way. At the time of the transition of children and youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities into our children's system of care, the focus was on integrating services and structures into the existing system and ensuring continuity of care. In that rapid transition, there wasn't an opportunity to take a step back to understand and incorporate the needs of families. And I do think that was a missed opportunity. Since that time, we've been working with our system partners to build that capacity. We have a statewide network of family support organizations which can connect you to peers with lived experience within the system. And if you haven't already connected with one of our family service organizations, or FSOs, I highly recommend reaching out. And we're continuing our work to expand other supports for family. In recent years and under recent children's system of care leadership, we recognize that as much as the family can be a source of strength and support for a child or youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities, they also have their own unique challenges, needs, and stressors. We're trying to do better by our families, to hear from them about the services and supports that they need, and to adapt our processes and procedures accordingly. We want to be just as dedicated to serving and supporting the family as we are to the youth living with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The Children's System of Care is committed to having families involved throughout the planning process and to providing services based on the needs of the children and their families, all in a family-centered, community-based environment. We want to honor family voice and support positive family experience. We know that we have work to do, but we're committed to doing it. Our families deserve our support, and I'm encouraged that the current leadership at the Children's System of Care share my vision for a family serving and family supporting system. Next slide. In the previous slide, I spoke about our system's aspirational goals of being better able to support families and better able to incorporate family voice into our planning process. But I also want to talk a little bit about the work that we're engaged in to modernize and improve the Children's System of Care. One of the issues that we've struggled with at the Children's System of Care has been bed capacity. We know that we need more beds at all group home and crisis bed acuity levels to meet the demands on our system. Historically, we've struggled with a system that hadn't seen a rate increase in almost 15 years. As a result, we would put out requests for proposals to providers to expand our bed capacity, but the low rates, the monetary rates, did not support the expansion. When we did get bids, some of those programs never even got off the ground or came to fruition. In the last two budget cycles and in recent years, we've taken significant steps to modernize the system. With the governor's and legislature's support, we've been able to secure $108 million in investment into the Children's System of Care. We worked with our partners on the federal level through the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and increased our reimbursement rates for all in-home and out-of-home services billed through Medicaid. Also with the support of the New Jersey Department of Human Service Office of Medicaid. As a result, we will be better positioned to attract competitive bids as we seek to build capacity at all acuity and need levels, to cut down on wait times for beds and to make it easier for families to access services, particularly for children and young adults who need the group home level of service. In addition, we've held several sessions in recent years through the Children's System of Care to capture and incorporate stakeholder and family voice in our plans to rebalance the system. We created a short-term stakeholder engagement task force to define and shape the division's behavioral and physical health integration model, which includes services for children and youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities. More than a third of the participants on the stakeholder engagement task force came directly from the IDD advocacy community. And through our Office of Family Voice at DCF and participation in our family support organizations, we continue to engage families in directing the system. Finally, one of the areas where we know there is additional need is around the topic of family respite. We've heard directly from families, and we know that we want and need more respite services and opportunities. We're exploring ways in which we can increase capacity to meet family needs. All told, our system is moving in the right direction on a number of fronts. In some cases, it almost feels like while we talk about youth transitioning from the children's system to the adult system, we're also talking about the transition of the children's system of care from its origins to an adaptive, rebalanced, and modernized system with the resources and the vision to serve families, children, and youth throughout the state. I really appreciate your patience as we continue our progress, but I promise you, we are moving there. Next slide. One of our goals through the Department of Children and Families is to reduce the administrative challenges to access services. We want to allow young people and their families to focus on the positive aspects of growing up, gaining a measure of independence, celebrating important milestones, and forging a sense of identity and direction. The transition from childhood to adulthood should be about building life skills and competencies, learning your own capabilities, and securing and growing relationships with family and friends. It should not be endless piles of forms and triplicate and constant paperwork. As much as we can work with our colleagues at the Division of Developmental Disabilities, we want to create a streamlined and seamless process for families so that no one is lost in the shuffle and that it never feels like an administrative or bureaucratic burden on the family or primary caregiver. And I know that we've made some progress in this area, but I also know that we still have a lot of work to do. I can almost hear some of you groaning on the other end of the video. But we also know that there are things that we can do right now to make for an easier transition process. Next slide. We recognize that one of the most critical ways we can support youth and families in the planning process towards transition is through early engagement. Early and consistent team collaboration provides a path for proactive planning, creating a sense of calm and control so that we aren't responding to something last minute, or at least not responding to everything at the last minute. Through early collaboration and engagement, we can successfully navigate the transition to adulthood in a planful and intentional way. Early identification of needs, development of supportive strategies, and connections, as well as engagement with supportive systems and services, offers the best chance at understanding the available support options, incorporating youth and family voice in our decision-making, and ensuring connections to resources that will serve young people and their families as they transition into adulthood. Next slide. As I said earlier, the family is the key to the success of the transition plan, but the support network doesn't end at the edge of a young person's biological family tree. It's true that none of us walk alone. Think back to your own young adulthood and the people that influenced who you are today. In some cases, family, absolutely, but also friends, educators, mentors, coaches, maybe someone in the community. If you were like me, you likely had your biological family and your found family. The found family were the people who felt as close to you as biological family, but were not related by blood. The same is true for young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Making sure we build up those support networks through family, caregiver friends, educators, community service providers, it helps us as a system to identify personal goals, desires, dreams, possibilities, and necessities in their care and transition plan. And it gives the individual time to cultivate trusted relationships and connections that are needed to achieve, to adjust when necessary, and to sustain forward momentum. Don't be afraid to invite other people in, to ask for help when it's needed, and to encourage the people who care about you to take an active role in your next steps. We encourage you to be willing to build up your support network so that you are surrounded by strength and reassurance if things don't go quite as planned. Next slide. When we consider that there are so many different aspects of planning for the transition to adulthood, it can feel intimidating. The financial planning and management, employment, health insurance. If the youth plans to continue their education, you have to plan for that. You have to plan for support services in the community. What's the plan to maintain family connections, both the immediate and extended family? Who's going to be the person advocating that the youth's voice is being heard? Thankfully, you're not alone in the planning process. Through the Children's System of Care, we have a family team structure so that the family can feel linked to experts who can walk you through the transition process. It's still a lot of planning. I don't want to minimize that, but there are avenues for assistance if you need it, and people within the system who are dedicated to help you. If you haven't already connected, I urge you to reach out to your CMO and begin the family teaming process. Next slide, please. The transition from childhood into adulthood is a process that's navigated as our young people's bodies and brains continue to develop, each on their own unique developmental trajectories. As a result, we have to be flexible in navigating this process, willing to shift our attention if necessary and respond to changing circumstances. The people that know our young people best are often the best equipped to point us in the right direction to provide the assistance that's needed. No, not a cookie cutter, one size fits most delivery service. That's why incorporating family voice is crucial in ensuring positive outcomes. But we also have to trust the clinical supports in place, the assessments, the case management, and the family team sessions. Youth who face developmental and intellectual challenges need understanding of their unique skills and challenges, and people who are willing to support them in achieving their potential. As a parent, I 100% sympathize with parents wanting to advocate for their children's best interests. I would expect nothing less, and I would do nothing less for my own children. But as a leader within a child welfare system, I also recognize that sometimes the clinical needs of a young adult may not match the parent's wishes. Ultimately, when we can achieve the necessary balance between parental and caregiver advocacy and clinical advice and therapeutic guidelines, then we can achieve the best possible outcomes for the youth and family. Next slide. I previously mentioned our partnerships with other state agencies, and in particular, how we've worked with our colleagues at the Division of Developmental Disabilities within the Department of Human Services to streamline the transition process. Through our Children's System of Care, we maintain a close relationship with the 4 regional DDD offices of intake and intensive case management to facilitate collaboration and coordination among our care management organizations and the DDD support coordinators. We've participated in and will continue to participate in roundtables and information sessions to support youth as they transition to the adult system. And through our Children's System of Care Office of Constituent Relations, we engage in high-level troubleshooting between the Children's System of Care and the DDD administration, striving to provide excellent customer service for youth and families who are transitioning to the adult services and who are establishing eligibility after turning 18. This collaborative relationship is grounded in our shared commitment to the youth in our care. Beyond the co-working relationship, we're also working closely with the Department of Human Services to improve both the child and adult systems for individuals living with IDD. We're establishing a multi-departmental, intergovernmental work group led by the Department of Children and Families and the Department of Human Services to examine services and explore new opportunities for collaboration. With the renewal of the Medicaid Comprehensive Waiver, DDD is proposing to implement several policy changes to support transition. The first is a consideration of earlier eligibility for certain services for individuals who are 18 and older who are outside of their educational entitlement, and greater flexibility and support for individuals transitioning from children's services to DDD waiver programs. The concept paper is currently posted on the DDD website for public comment, and I highly encourage you to take a look and provide your input. As our leadership is working closely with the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services, also in the Department of Human Services, to make the crisis screening process more child and family friendly, and to reduce trauma related to crisis screening. We recognize that when a family is in crisis, they need compassion to help guide them through. We recognize that a lot of these conversations and partnerships are long overdue, particularly for a population of young people who will need to live in a group home setting or care setting for the rest of their lives. We know we need to do better, and we're committed to working with a systems focus, not just DCF, not just DHS, but across the entire system spectrum to do exactly that. Next slide. As you take steps to plan for the transition from the child serving system to the adult serving system in New Jersey, the elephant in the room, at least this year, is the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 has drastically changed so many aspects of our daily life for all of us. There's a reason why this conference today is virtual rather than in person. We're all experiencing a communal and personal sense of loss and grief, whether because we lost a friend or a loved one to COVID-19, or lost any sense or semblance of the word normal. And we know that the disruption in routine can particularly be triggering for children and adults living with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Earlier this week, I participated in a media briefing with the governor in which we unveiled a new web tool for youth mental health, covid19.nj.gov/youth health. This website will serve as a one-stop resource for youth, parents, and educators to access resources, connect to services, and navigate the support infrastructure. For youth in particular, there's linkages to the second floor call center and text line and the crisis text line. For parents, there are resources around mental health first aid and ways in which to connect to the children's system of care, among others. I know right now we're experiencing a very difficult time in our state. And for the families and children and youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities, existing stressors are amplified even further. If you're struggling, please know that help is a phone call or a click away. Next slide, please. So finally, in closing, I just want to reiterate, even while you and your family are planning ahead for your transition into adulthood, the Department of Children and Families is working on and planning for a transition of our own. We're transitioning from the old siloed system to something that's forward-thinking and collaborative. We're transitioning from a system that was underfunded to a system now with the resources needed to meet the needs of families and children. We're engaging our state partners and system providers to enhance services and streamline processes. And we're engaging families with lived experience to point us in the right direction. I know that the progress can seem slow, but after a long time and a lot of work, we are moving in the right direction. Please make sure you do your part. Learn what you can from this conference and other learning opportunities. Engage with us early. Build your support network and balance your parental advocacy against clinical advice. Remain flexible and adaptive, especially as we deal with changing circumstances, either related to your child's development or the COVID-19 pandemic. And let your voice be heard. We want to hear from you so that we can improve the system and reflect your feedback in our own planning processes. In the spring, we will be engaging in another round of needs assessments in all 21 counties. And there will be specific emphasis on the voice of youth and parents with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Together, we will build the system that your children and your families deserve. Thank you. Have a wonderful conference. Enjoy the day. And if we have time, I'm happy to take a couple questions from the audience, but I'll leave that to the producer here.
Thank you, Commissioner Beyer. Yes, we are a little bit on a time crunch as far as our schedule goes. So our next keynote speaker, Julia Bergeau, who's a parent advocate in her own right, will be hosting the next session. So we'll be closing this one, and that is accessible via our webpage that you registered for this keynote as well. Thank you,
Great.
Commissioner
Thank you
Meyer.
so much for having me.